everyone, Father Casey, and welcome to the Fourth Magi. In the next few weeks, the church is going to have readings that deal with the end of time, as we come to the conclusion of the season of ordinary time, and we move into the new year, the new liturgical year, and the season of Advent in preparation for Christmas. The great author, Stephen Covey, who is well known for his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says as one of the habits of a highly effective person is to begin with the end in mind. Now that might take a little thought for you, but I love that saying because it means that when you begin a project, that you must know where you're going so that you'll know when to arrive, when you know when you're done. You know when you've achieved your goal. But if you don't have a goal, if the goal is as wispy and esoteric and you don't know what you're doing, you kind of wander like a lost person in the woods. So, but if you know what the end is, well then you know where you're going and you'll have a better chance of getting there because you'll find the right directions. That's in a nutshell. Stephen Covey does it much better. Because this week in the readings, we hear about the Final Four. Now, I'm not referring to the NCAA Final Four. I'm referring to the 4 last things that you and I will have to deal with. That is death, judgment, heaven, hell, or purgatory. Now, we're all going to die. You may not think about it. It may be the last thing that you want to hear from me, and it might sound pretty morbid that I say that statement. But it really is an important statement that we're all going to die, because that really lines up with Stephen Covey's statement to begin with the end in mind. Because knowing that we're going to die one day, we really have to think about when we get there, how well have we lived this life? And you know, in my 22 years as a priest, in my 23 years in ordained ministry, I have dealt with death in so many different situations. You pretty much name it, and I've had to deal with it. I've had to bury babies. I've had to bury young children, teenagers, young adults, middle-aged people, and people who have lived a long, full life at the age of 101, 102 even. So one thing I've learned is that death does not discriminate. You can't think, well, I'm young, and therefore I don't have to think about death. How many people do we hear about that are young and they die tragically? In a car accident, they are hit by stray gunfire, they're hit by a car crossing the street. Death can come to us in so many different ways. And so, as morbid as it might sound, it is something that we should always keep in the forefront of our mind, not in the back, because then we guide our life with that knowledge. Because the second thing, following death, is judgment. That's what we believe as Christians, that we are going to be judged. Jesus tells us so. And being judged, we're going to be judged by a certain set of criteria. In the Gospels, Jesus is very clear. He says when the Son of Man comes, he's going to separate us like sheep from goats. The sheep is going to be on his right, that's the good side, in case you didn't know. And the goats are going to be on his left, that's the bad side. And as he separates them, he tells the ones on his right that when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was homeless, you gave me a home. When I was naked, you gave me clothing. Well, when I was sick, you comforted me. When I was in prison, you visited me. And the people on his right, the sheep, the good sheep, are going to say to him, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty? And then they go down the list. And Jesus says something that's very important for us to learn. that whatever you did to the least of my brothers and sisters, you did for me. Meaning that how we take care of our brothers and sisters, our fellows on this earth, is the final exam. That is the exam that you and I must pass in order to gain entry to the next phase, meaning heaven. That is the great reward. If we've lived a life in which we've loved other people. Jesus was very explicit. Love one another as I have loved you. Meaning he sacrificed himself for us. And we're called to sacrifice ourselves for other people, whether we like them or not. Because Jesus died for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so that's a fact. And if we're going to follow Jesus, well, then we have to be willing to love the good, the bad, and the ugly. We don't get to choose. That's not how it works. And so heaven is the end that we should keep in mind. Now, purgatory is another choice. And purgatory is actually a very merciful teaching of the church. It is like kind of like God's waiting room, but in that waiting room, we make up for all that we have failed to do in this life. What that looks like, I have no idea, really. You know, we think about a purifying fire, or, you know, all sorts of imagery comes to mind. But the fact is that if we have made it to purgatory, we made it. And that there's just more that we have to do in order to reach heaven. And I believe that when we get there, if we get there, that we're going to be okay with that. Because we're going to realize that in our lives, recognizing the love that God, Jesus, has had for us in this life, we're going to want to make up for what we didn't do in this life in order that we might be with them for eternity. Now, some people would like to say that purgatory doesn't exist. The Catholic Church changed its teaching. Just not true. But if you think about it, it's actually very merciful. Because if you take purgatory as a teaching out, what are you left with? Heaven or hell? And let's say, do you think you're ready to go to heaven? Do you think you're that pure of spirit to go to heaven if you died today? I'm not. I mean, I'm not that pure to go to heaven. You know, I'm not worthy of that. So if I'm not ready to go to heaven, you know, then where am I going to go if there's no purgatory? I'm going to go to hell. And you know what? That's a pretty grim future. Because a lot of us just struggle to pass the test in this world. And so to think that we have to be perfect in order to pass the test, well then we're really up a creek without a paddle. So if we live our lives with the foreknowledge that we're going to die, we're going to be judged, and as a result of that judgment, meaning how we lived our life on this earth in the time that we've been given, which we don't know how much we've been given, then there are three options for us: heaven, hell, or purgatory. I know where I want to go. Do you? God bless you. Have a great week.